What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the next Yakuza slash Like a Dragon game, and it sounds pretty interesting. Now, we get a tease of it, and the tease of it is that we're basically going to be surprised. Now, I'll read the entire quote for you as we go through it, but this came straight from the developers. It sounds like the game, is in the works and a pretty good amount of the way through. I mean, not like, it's coming out tomorrow or anything, but they've already started working on it. I believe they're doing their casting calls for, the actual cast of the game, so it's getting there. I mean, as we know from these developers, specifically them, they move at a lightning-like pace. They are one of the better developers if you've played the Yakuza or Like a Dragon games in terms of reusing assets, but reusing them in very smart ways, keeping employees that kind of work on the same thing every single game, so they just get into it quicker, right? They're kind of masters at that turnaround game, so it's not unbelievable to expect the next game within a couple years, or if they do a smaller spin-off, or if they do a Kiwami 3 type thing. Those things could come, I would say, even sooner, or maybe they were already, in the works. So just want to kind of paint that picture for you early on. So let's look at this article from Video Games Chronicle, which kind of goes over it. During the Essence of Fandom events at Anime Expo, the company teased what they are working on next. According to several fans in attendance, the studio said, "We can't tell you what kind of game it is, but I will tell you, you'll be surprised." And it was confirmed afterwards. That was kind of the first part. Afterwards, it was confirmed they were talking about Like a Dragon, so they're not talking about a completely, separate franchise or anything like that. So when they talk about, they can't say anything, but it'll surprise you, they're talking about, Like a Dragon or Yakuza. So that's kind of it, and that's really what I want to focus on, in this video. It's going to surprise us. Now, to me, I feel that has to be the genre or type of game. So obviously they pivoted, and for 7, if you want to call it 7, whatever you want to call these games, right? 7 and then Infinite Wealth, turn-based. I think it's personally phenomenal. I think it worked really well. I think 8 has a lot of weaknesses, and I think back, and I think of the strengths, and I also think of the weaknesses, but one of the biggest strengths, I think, of 8 is just, it's such a good game to play. The combat is so good. It gets you into a loop, but it feels amazing when you're doing it. All the different characters, to me, they really made how these characters fight, they made it translate perfectly into turn-based. So, we had The Man Who Erased His Name. That went back to like the old school stuff. Completely fine with that. I'm completely fine with turn-based. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter what I'm okay with. It matters what they are. I guess what I'm saying is I'd be okay with either. But the thing to me is when they say like you'll be surprised or it's going to surprise you, that to me says the genre. Because if you were to do a Yakuza 3 remake, right? Like a Kiwami 1, 2, and then you do a 3 now. Yakuza 3 has been talked about. In fact, they themselves have said, yeah, we're probably, we should or we're going to get around to that at some point. Like, you're going to get the third game remade. That's going to happen at some point in our lives. And I think actually some point very, very soon. If they did more turn-based stuff. And, if actually, let me stay on that thought, right? If you did Yakuza 3 remake, it would go back to the old style. If you did a Like a Dragon 9 or, whatever you want to call it, that would be back to turn-based. So there's no way, in my opinion, that you can surprise us with that, right? Like, if you know the ending of 8, like, there's a couple different paths with a couple different characters they can go down with, like, the next, full-on entry. But you could do a spin-off game. You could do, are we going to get, and this is kind of a joke, but it kind of signals like where my mind's at. Would you do like a kart racer or like a Mario Party type thing with Yakuza? I don't mean those entirely literally, but do you take a really big swing and do something just very, very different? You had Dead Souls, which was the least well-received probably of all of the games, including Ishin, including Judgment and Lost Judgment, all that stuff. Dead Souls was probably the weakest one. Now, I never played it. I'm saying, from like internet reception. It was also when Yakuza was smaller, right? It didn't have the kind of following it has now. That was different. That was not necessarily, I would say, a different genre, but a very different like scenario type game. Maybe it's that. Maybe instead of a genre, maybe it is still turn-based, but it's a medieval thing. I mean, they've already kind of done with Ishin and stuff. You know what I mean? Picking a timeline, picking something kind of random and doing it. Would that surprise us? I kind of think it would, I guess, depending on what they would do, right? So that's kind of where my mind is at. If anything, this shows me, or at least my speculation, like right now, is the next game. Whatever, maybe even what they're talking about specifically in that quote, right? It's not Like a Dragon blank. It's not the 9th, chronological game. It's also not, I would say, Kiwami 3 or the Yakuza 3 remake. I don't think it would be either of those. That doesn't surprise anybody. You know what I mean? I think it has to be this third mystery Haruka kind of side story where she's like, she goes back into the singing career, and it's a music rhythm melody game like Kingdom Hearts Melody Memory. That's their next thing. You know what I mean? Now, I think that would be crazy. It would also kind of be wild, but maybe something like that where it's off the path. It's not what we're expecting it. So that's kind of where my mind is at right now. Doesn't mean we're not going to get those other games. Again, they make a lot. Seemingly, I don't know exactly how the studio is structured. They make a lot of games kind of at once because they always have, like the next game going, and they have to be working on these somewhat simultaneously, right? So they always have more than one game in the works at a time, and they don't take as long as normal. Their games don't take 5, 6, 7 years. They take more like 3, 4, 5, right? Actually, 5 is not even 5, right? So it's more like 2, 3, 4, let's say. They're fast and they're good multitaskers. And that's kind of what their studio is at least in the development side, it's kind of what it's known for. So I don't think we have to wait all that long until we, get more answers to it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.